everyone, my name is Dane Sanders and I want to welcome you to Better Together in your city, whatever city that is. It's been remarkable to see all of the growth that's happened in and around the fast track community in the last, 6 months at least, but certainly the last number of years. But the last 6 months has been exponential, and you guys are the reason. You guys are the crazy photographers who actually believe that you're better together than you are in isolation. And I can't tell you how much of an encouragement it is for me, and it gets me excited every month to create these videos for you guys. And just to know that there are communities of people that are gathering together who want to make a difference with their business, with their lives, with their photography, and to do it in community with like-minded folks who really want to be supportive, who believe in the future of our industry, that they want to contribute as leaders, not just as consumers. And that's you. So as we go over today's topic for the video, I hope it's helpful. And where I'm really confident it will be helpful is with your leaders, as you guys engage the dialogue and the conversation together as a group. I have a hunch that's where the biggest value is going to be. So hopefully this video is just instrumental to that end. Now, if you're new to Better Together, and this is the first time you've seen a video with me, my name is Dane Sanders again, and I'm a photographer in Southern California. I've written a couple books. One's called Fast Track Photographer, and the other one's called The Fast Track Photographer Business Plan. Now, the reason I reference that is the first book, Fast Track Photographer. If you've read that book, in the final chapter of the revised edition, I have a whole section on the nature of change. And what I'm going to cover tonight is basically that chapter. And I'll give you a quick snapshot of it that you can then apply in tonight in your conversations, and then beyond tonight, hopefully in your whole lives. For me, this has been a hugely impactful idea that I've been using for most of my adult life, and I've seen a ton of bottom line results as I've employed these ideas. So let's jump right in. The law of change. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you guys is this. If you're not a math major, don't freak out. It's no big deal. It's just a little formula that I have here. And these letters all represent something that I think will be really helpful for you as I give language to it. So I'm going to say a sentence a few times in a row. And the sentence should give you a sense of clarity as to what these mean. And then when you see these symbols later, they can remind you of what they mean. Now, I need to say before I get started that this law of change doesn't tell you what to do. What this law of change does, though, is that it gives explanatory power as to why change isn't happening. Why change isn't happening. And as you'll see in a second, that reveal, that explanation of what isn't happening can then direct your course about what you can do to make a difference, to make a shift. Especially if you're in one of those situations where you've said in the past you want to make a change in a lot of areas or in one particular area. And by the way, this law of change applies to everything in your life, not just photography. But anything that you said you wanted to change in the past, but for whatever reason, and you don't know the reason, it hasn't changed. It could be getting 10 more wedding gigs this year. It could get 20 more portrait gigs this year. It could generate another $100,000 in revenue for you this year. It could help you to quit smoking. It could help you to lose weight. It could help you to apply anything in any area in your life where you say you want change to happen and it's not happening. This will tell you why. And once you understand that, you can then make shifts in your world and in the way you are showing up in life and get a new result. And when you do, you'll see why things shifted. So let's jump right into it. So this is what these symbols mean. This letter C stands for change. That's right, you guessed it. So change happens if and only if. That's what this little symbol means. It's an equal sign with a less than and a greater than around the equal sign. And this just means if and only if. Change happens if and only if. And by the way, if you remember logic from college or high school, this will come in handy. But again, it's just a symbol. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. Change happens if and only if your vision times your dissatisfaction with the status quo, and I'll get back to all these in a minute, times your plan is greater than X. And I'll explain X in just a moment. So let me say this about 10 more times. Change happens if and only if your vision times your dissatisfaction with the status quo, with the way things are currently, times your plan. When those three things combine together, when they're multiplied together, and they combine to a number, like a concrete number we're going to come up with in a minute. When these three things are multiplied together and they come up with a number that is greater than X, change will happen necessarily 100% of the time, whether you like it or not. Change happens if and only if And it will happen every single time, if and only if your vision times your dissatisfaction times your plan is greater than X. Now, to offer a little bit more explanation, let me talk about vision, dissatisfaction, and plan. Vision is simply, if you were to give yourself a grade between 0 and 10, 0 meaning you have no clue what it would look like in the future for change to happen, and 10 being crystal clear, like Technicolor, like perfect vision of exactly what the world's going to look like when things shift, you give yourself a number. So whatever it is that you want to see change happen with in your business, in your life, whatever it is, and it can be little, it could just be like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Can you picture life with 10 less pounds in your life? What does your day look like? What are you eating? Are you doing any exercise? Whatever your day really looks like in the physical universe, if you can picture it, give yourself a number between 0 and 10. Don't just go 0 or 10. Go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Use all of the spectrum and decide what number is most accurately for you. And maybe write that number down for yourself. Now, usually people think they have a more crystal clear vision than they really do. So if you gave yourself a 6 or a 7, you might want to downgrade that to like a 3 or a 4. But that's between you and your leader. You guys can talk about this later. So change happens if and only if your vision, which is measured between 0 and 10, times your dissatisfaction, which is also measured between 0 and 10, times your plan, which is also measured between 0 and 10, when these three things together are multiplied, so it could be like 5 times 5, which would be 25, times 5, which is 25 times 5 is 125. Whatever this is, if these three things add up to more than whatever X is, and X is measured between 0 and 1,000, what's going to happen is when these three things are multiplied together, if it happens to be more than X, necessarily 100% of the time, whether you like it or not, things will just tip. Things will change. Now, you've seen this in action all over the place. You've seen this in life where somebody makes a dramatic shift in their life, and they're like, what happened? Why did they fail for so many times in a row and then got clear? My favorite example of this is my friend Mark Hayes. Mark Hayes lives in the Denver area. He's a photographer, and he came to the Roadshow workshop a few years ago, and I tell the story with permission, Mark had a lot of weight on. He weighed about 415 pounds. And he committed, he wanted to lose 200. And we got in a conversation, this is on the heels of talking about the law of change, and we got clear on it, and he said, I asked him, so what's your vision on a scale of 0 to 10? And he gave a number. And I said, what's your dissatisfaction? Like, oh, by the way, I should mention, dissatisfaction is simply how bummed you are, how angry you are, how frustrated you are. Like, you want to be more discontent. That's actually a good thing in this formula if you want to see change happen. So you want a high number for vision. You want to be highly dissatisfied. And the plan is simply a rating between 0 and 10 on what single step you need to do next. You don't need to know the master plan, just what one thing you need to do next. So when you multiply those three things together, if it's greater than X, and I'll explain X again in a minute, change will happen. So with Mark, my friend, he was at a place where change wasn't happening. He had tried everything to lose weight for several years. And there was a lot of reasons why he was in the situation he was. Well, as we talked a little bit, and we kind of got clearer on where were the gaps, vision and dissatisfaction and plan, and X. X is actually the linchpin here. Where was he missing? And he began to pinpoint where things were stuck. And he did some radical things, in particular around dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction. And he said, I asked him, how dissatisfied are you with weighing 415 pounds? And he said, I'm severely dissatisfied. And I said, I don't believe you. Based on results in your life. You don't look like someone who's dissatisfied. You look like you're somebody who's committed to being 415 pounds for the rest of your life. And rather than being offended by my comment, he took that as constructive, and he fueled himself. And he said, well, I want to be more dissatisfied. How can I do that? And I suggested, why don't you take pictures of yourself in your skivvies and put them up on the internet? And he did. And I got to tell you, if you want to increase your dissatisfaction with weight, put a picture of yourself up in your skivvies on the internet. And I guarantee you, your dissatisfaction will increase. Do you think his dissatisfaction increased his vision about what things could look like when things are new? Do you think he had a plan on what to do next? Once the pictures were up, was he going to live like that for the rest of his life? Really what was happening was when he increased his dissatisfaction, he ended up decreasing the X. And the X factor is everything. The X factor is what it's going to cost you to see change happen. What it's going to cost you. And it's just a number between 0 and 1,000. Now, what's interesting about X is X can come in many commodities. X could be like your money, your time. We just graduated a bunch of Fastermind people who went through this small group coaching program. And I have 3 groups that I started so far this year. 1 just finished. I have 2 running right now. We're going to open up another one shortly. We have a number of groups run by leaders. Even people, maybe even your leader might be leading a Fastermind. But in that conversation around group coaching, what I've noticed is when people put their money and their time towards things, they value it. And when they value it, they get new results in their life. And that's what was happening with these Fasterminds people. That's certainly what happened for my friend Mark. And that's what could happen for you guys tonight. Not that I'm asking for money or time. Just notice where you put your money and your time is where you're going to see results, where you're willing to pay the price to see something new show up. And when you aren't willing to value those things, just think of a client who doesn't really value photography, or they say they value photography, but they don't want to pay for it. That displays to you the reality that they don't value it. They don't want to pay the price. And if they don't want to pay the price, no problem. You know that they're not your client. So in the same way for yourself, it's time to get real. Are you serious about paying the price to get what you really want out of your business and your life, or aren't you? And if you're not, there's no judgment. You're still welcome to all the Better Together groups anywhere you want to come. But I promise you, your dissatisfaction is going to increase over time as you see your colleagues who are willing to pay the price, whether it be time, money, ego, pride, looking foolish, feeling like a beginner, not sure they understand it, putting themselves out there, asking questions even on the heels of this video, but putting them in a position where they can actually give themselves a shot for change to happen. Now, all that said, I'll just review it again. Change happens if and only if your vision times your dissatisfaction times your plan is greater than X. Well, for Mark, when he put himself in that position, slowly but surely, month after month, drip, 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 Mark lost something like 165 pounds in the course of 2 years. His goal was to hit 200, and he's still on that road to lose 200 pounds. But again, and I believe in him. He's transformed. He's been honest in his process. But as things have shifted and tipped back and forth, more in the favor position rather than in a position where he wasn't getting things done, you can survey him or survey yourself. And I promise you, whenever the vision was crystal clear in his mind, whenever he was intentionally dissatisfied with the way things were, whenever he had a plan of what single thing he needed to do next, whether it was go to the gym or eat a salad or whatever his thing was, and he was willing to pay the price for those things to happen, guess what? Change just happened. There's also a correlation here. He came to our workshop and his business was suffering. And by his witness to me, what he told me was, through this process of over these 2 years, his business tripled. His business tripled. So there was a correlation where change happened in multiple areas of his life when he took responsibility, was willing to pay the price, worked hard to picture a vision, to get dissatisfied, and to have a plan. And the result was massive shifts happening. Now, one last thing, and this is a bonus I just want to point out here. Notice that these are measured between 0 and 10, 0 and 10, 0 and 10. What do you notice right away about that? That's right. If any of these numbers are 0, like if I have no dissatisfaction, or I have no clue what the future is, or I have no clue what the single task I need to do next is, anything times 0 is what? It's 0. So even if the vision was 10 and the plan was 10, but the dissatisfaction was 0, 10 times 10 is 100 times 0 is 0. Is 0 ever greater than anything? No. So necessarily you need to have a little bit of vision, a little bit of dissatisfaction, and a clue on the next single step you need to do to have a chance for change ever to happen. Otherwise, it just won't. And it would be more resourceful to not get worked up of like, why, I can see it perfectly, why aren't things changing? It's because you're probably not dissatisfied enough, or at all, or your plan isn't in place, or any of the other things can adjust. So on this side, you're playing offense. On this side, you're playing defense. And by the way, with X, it's really 0, between 0 and 1,000. It's rarely 1,000, and it's rarely 0. The cost is just a little bit more than you're willing to pay right now. And if you make a shift in your mindset about what you are willing to pay, watch out. Watch out and see what will happen. Next month, we're going to take this conversation even further and build off of the law of change and apply the law of change relative to the relationships you have with things and people in your life. So it could be how you relate with gear at trade shows. It could be how you relate with your spouse or your friends. It could be how you relate with Facebook. It could be how you relate with anything. And as we talk about how people relate with things and people universally, you can then think, if I don't like the way that I'm relating with any of these things, how can I apply the law of change to understand why I'm not going to a newer vision or a bigger picture of what I could do in those spaces? But don't worry about next month for now. Worry about this month, because actually don't worry. It's actually just fun. Engage this month. Lean into the conversation that you're about to have tonight. Thank your leader for all that they're doing. The way they sacrifice to make it happen, whether it be a group of 2 or 3 or 4 that are gathering, or 30, 40, 50, or 60 that are gathering. It doesn't matter. These people are standing in the gap for our industry, and I believe are heroes. And be sure to thank them for all that they're doing. And if you have any feedback on any of this stuff, if you want future videos, if you want guests on Fast Track Coaching, anything, let me know, and I'll do my best to oblige. Take care.